Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'na wa anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna ilman wa ikhlasan wa tawfiqan ya akram al-akramin. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. نويت تعلم وتعليم وتذكر تذكير الانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله سنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والداعي إلى الهدى إلى الخير ابتغاء جلاله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. طيب. Continuing on from last class, just to touch upon one thing we spoke about in last class. We spoke about the importance of fardul ain. Okay, and this is obligatory knowledge which is incumbent upon each Muslim, once they become or get to the age of maturity, puberty, right? Now, fardul ain, the way that it's an obligation for a person to pray and fast, it's also an obligation for him to study certain knowledges. The most important knowledge of fard ain is tawheed, belief in God. Okay, theology or Islamic beliefs. This is extremely important, and this is fardul ain. A person who hasn't studied this, he is sinful for as long as he hasn't studied it. Okay, a person is, so if he's 30 and he's not studied, from the time he became baligh, he reached the age of puberty at 15. That means he's been sinful since 10 years. Understand the importance of it. Like, he's left an obligation he has to learn about God. This is extremely important. What do we believe about God? What can we not believe about Him? Okay, because obviously there's other within the fold of Islam as well. The Prophet told us that there's going to be people with misguided beliefs, incorrect ones as well. So this why is extremely important that fard ain, and the first thing to focus on is learning this type of knowledge, belief in God, the divine books, the messengers, angels, divine destiny, the good and bad, how to understand that, and obviously life after death as well. This is all fard ain, and this is the first thing a person's meant to be. And most people, like, this is things that we should be teaching our children. And the first thing you focus on is when the child becomes of an age where he understands, you start instilling in him the belief in God and the messengers, and then you work yourself up after that. A person doesn't have to become a scholar. It's a good thing if you can become a scholar, right? But it's not incumbent. Not everyone has to. But this knowledge that we're talking about here, this isn't for scholars only. This is the normal, average person. This is an obligation that, regardless of who you are, what occupation you want to do, is extremely important that you have to learn this. And, this can be covered in a short time. We've obviously taught the Aqidatul Islam by Imam al-Haddad. We have, inshallah, maybe in September time we're going to start a new courses on it as well, but a person definitely needs to take time to study that. Correct belief in God. You could be worshipping God for 60 years and then on the day of judgment, none of it is accepted because your belief in God was incorrect. La ilaha illallah. So not to have any anthropomorphic belief about God and understanding that. Most of us, Ramadan comes, we open up the Quran, is mentioned the hand of God in there. How are you meant to understand that? Like, as in, if you don't have background knowledge, you take that literally, that's borderline kufr it is. Because it's definitely not talking about this hand. You understand? So that's why, like, extremely important that a person learn that. So the scholars have looked at it, and verses like that, they call them mutashabihat. Those verses which you can't take them literally. The outward meaning of those verses are obviously problematic there. So there's two ways of understanding it. This how the Sahaba and the Tabi'in understood them. The first is we don't interpret it. When a verse comes and it's written there, hand of God, we don't interpret it. We don't delve into it. And all we say is we believe in this verse, however God intended. That's all we're not going to delve into it. Yes, the one thing we have to do 100%, we have to negate and completely say with conviction, it's not referring to a hand. The concept and understanding of a human hand or anything like that, no. That we definitely have to negate that. Okay, well, if it's not talking about this hand, what hand? Allahu Alam. We don't delve into it, we don't go into it. Whatever God intended. The second school of thought within the Ahlus Sunnah is they said, let's look into the linguistical meanings of hands. The word hand in the Arabic language, metaphorically speaking, what does it refer to? When you say the king's hand is on top of his people, what does that mean? That literally he's got his hand on the hundreds and thousands of them? No, that's not what it means. It means his control, his power. That's what's meant by it. So the second interpretation was we're gonna negate the literal, but the meaning of hand could possibly refer to the power of God. God's hand was on top of them, as in the power of God encompassed them. That's what they said. So it's extremely important that if a person who hasn't studied that and he comes across hand and he thinking, yeah, God got a hand. La ilaha illallah. How? That's kufr, that is, to believe that then you're likening God to us, So the importance of studying this. Then obviously the importance of studying fiqh. Fiqh, how to worship God. Ablution, ghusl, tayammum, haid, menses, which is important for the ladies as well. Extremely important. That's fard is. For ladies to know when the haid starts and finishes, fard. For them to write it down, fard. Sometimes it's fard for them to pray and fast. They're not. Why? Because they think it's menses. And sometimes where it's haram for them, they're not supposed to be praying. They're praying there. La ilaha illallah. Big problem. And this obviously affects them down the line as well, because when you get after nikah and that, you can't have marital relations if your family's on her haid. So there's to have marital relations while she's on her menses is from the kaba'ir. Now this all comes down to her knowledge of that. If she doesn't understand, she's just like, Yallah, Bismillah, we're just going to do anything. When it comes, it comes, it goes. We'll have a boat, we won't have a boat, how we have. So I'm just saying, like, this affects her partner as well, it affects her as well. So these are extremely important ahkam that you can't be, if you've started practicing, learning the religion, taking it seriously, and the first thing you're focusing on in studying Arabic, you've got your priorities wrong. You have studying Arabic is excellent. Make time out. Your fard ain is much more important. Don't say, no, I'm going to do Arabic first, and then 5 years later, if you live 5 years later, obviously, then I'm going to start doing fard ain. No. Fard ain, we extremely important. You as a mother or a father don't know this. When you have children, how are you going to educate them? Basic things, these are. These are basic things. My father, rahimahullah, like, he wasn't a scholar. He taught us how to pray, fast, the basic ahkam. And that's your sadaqah jariyah as a parent. Like, you've taught your child how to recite the Fatiha. Every salah until death now, you're going to benefit. You've taught them how to have a ghusl properly, how to perform ablution properly, how to work menses out properly. That's it. The first sadaqah jariyah and the first concern is your family. So extremely important. This knowledge is extremely important. Okay, like, there's no excuse for the ain. Again, I'm not saying you have to become a scholar, but you need to know the absolute basics. And the third, so this is, now obviously Imam Ghazali goes into a lot of depth. I'm not going off topic here, right? He talks about this. He goes into a lot of depth. He does that. When does it become fard upon you? Technically speaking, if you're never going to perform Hajj and it's not fard upon you, studying is not fard as well. You like, Hajj now costs what, $7,000 or 10 I think now, right? You're always in debt. You don't have that much money on you. It's not fard upon you yet. So technically speaking, you don't have to learn about it yet. Until it becomes zakat, technically speaking, you're poor you are. You've been in debt for like a long time, you have. It's not fard for you to pay. Tomorrow you win the lottery, khalas, the first thing you need to do is attend the fardain zakat course now. But praying, fasting, menses, things like this, no. That starts early on, it does, so you need to learn that early on as well. And then, it's good to attend all, obviously, classes of knowledge, sacred knowledge as well. The absolute minimum, you attend and you walk out, your sins are forgiven. That's not my guarantee, that's the guarantee of the Prophet. That's the absolute minimum. You attend a class of sacred knowledge, that's the absolute minimum. And it's good to always go over this stuff and learn and love knowledge. The first words of revelation that came down, Iqra, basically study. The Prophet ﷺ would have prisoners of war and say to them, if you teach the Sahaba how to write, I'll let you go away. Your families don't have to come and pay ransoms of thousands. No. Teach 10 of them, you can go. He gave a lot of importance to education. But what type of education? Bismi Rabbika. God's education first. Learn about His religion. Learn about, and then after that, if you want to become a doctor or dentist or whatever, you want to become a taxi driver, go ahead. But as in, this is all fard ain is extremely important. The third fard ain knowledge is obviously purification of the heart. Fard ain is. Most of our scholars, Ibn Ata'illah, Secondary, Ghazali as well, they said not only is it fard ain to study about the sicknesses of the heart, what is pride, arrogance, ostentation, jealousy. No, you need to find a doctor. Ibn Ata'illah mentions it, his fatwa. Maliki faqih, huge, he's written the famous hikam. He said, is fard upon you to go find yourself a spiritual doctor. The way there's physical doctors, there's spiritual doctors as well. Fudala, he had a knife. He saw the Prophet doing tawaf. He goes, this is my chance now. When the Prophet is doing tawaf, I'm going to come from behind, stab him. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. The Prophet did tawaf, came to him, Fudala, what are you secretly talking about? He goes, nothing, O Messenger of God. I'm just doing tawaf and remembering God. He knows something's up here. I'm just thinking this and the Prophet telling me this. Second time the Prophet goes and he's thinking this, now's my chance. The Prophet said, what are you talking about? I know you're talking to yourself, you are. He said, nothing, I'm just remembering God. The third time the Prophet said to him, what's that knife you're hiding? La ilaha illallah. He read his thoughts. The Prophet places blessed hands on him. He goes, Wallahi al-Azim, before that no one was more hated. Like I detested no one more than him. The moment he put his hand and lifted it, no one was more beloved to me than him. He cured not his spiritual sicknesses, he even took kufr and hypocrisy out of him, just with one touch. There's no greater spiritual doctor. He just touched him, everything went out. Kufr, nifaq, hypocrisy, hatred for the Prophet, everything came in. Love of the Messenger, love of God, la ilaha illallah. Uthman ibn Affan, we mentioned this the other night as well. He was giving the Friday speech. A man, this is mentioned by Ibn Kathir, Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, all of the biggest hadith scholars, because I know there's always people here, Dalil Brigade, right? And this man was walking to the masjid. He saw a lady on the street, lustfully gazed at her, came in the masjid, and he noticed a man coming. He goes, one of you commits fornication with his eyesight and then comes into the masjid of the Prophet. He screamed out, La ilaha illallah. Is there revelation of the Prophet? No. He said, no, this isn't. But the Prophet said, Ittaqu firasat al-mu'min. There's believers out there, God's given them this inner sight He has. They can look at you, wallahi, they can look at you and they know exactly what you've been up to. Yeah, that's what. Who told him this man was looking at some lady in a lustful? Like what he came in and what he goes, yeah, look, I was looking at someone. No. Gosh. La ilaha illallah. So extremely important. The spiritual doctors, they are out there. Man dhaq araf. Salihun, man. There's nothing greater than love of the Salihin and being connected to them. So, extremely important that we all, take care of this fard ain as well. Not only just learn about the sicknesses of the heart, to find people that are going to help us purify them as well. Hope no one's recording these at home. So problem with online classes, you don't even know half the people behind the screens. That's why, knowledge was normally Malik. They said to him, I think it was Abu Ja'far. He goes, look, come to my house. I'm the king I am, Hakim the Sultan, and it's not befitting my children come to your halaqat, where aristocrat, we come from high, like it's not befitting my scholars, my children, the next in line, crown princes or whatever, they come to your gatherings. You come to the palace. He goes, no. Knowledge, you come to it, knowledge doesn't come to you. I'm not putting anyone off. Obviously, people have excuses. They can't, or someone needs to cook the pakore at home on time, and otherwise, if you attend the classes, big issues. Even though there's a couple of guys here, unless they're doing cooking at home, so God knows. So those are three of the important things. Not that there's anything wrong with them. Mashallah, good. So La ilaha illallah. The fourth, some scholars have considered it fard ain as well, right? Is learning the science of how to pronounce Quran, recite the Quran properly. Tilawa, tajweed, learning the basic ahkam of it. Again, you don't have to become like huge scholars in it, Qari Abdul Basit and things like that, but it's good to, obviously. If not, you have to learn the basics. Okay, makhraj and things like that. And also the signs of the end of time as well. A lot of our teachers consider that also fard ain. Inshallah, we strive and hope that OCC in September time, we will start a lot of these courses. Inshallah, fard ain ones in Tawheed, in Fiqh, Tasawwuf, and also end of times as well. La ilaha illallah. The last class then, we were talking about those things which invalidate a fast and those things which necessitate qada, which is you just have to make up one fast, or it necessitates a 60-day one. Now, just to make it clear, the only thing that necessitates a 60-day kafara is if you're fasting, you intentionally, knowingly eat something, drink something, or have marital relations. This necessitates a 60-day consecutive kafara. It does. Now, inshallah, I don't think anyone's going to be doing this like he knows he's fasting. There's not, and just gets a drink, he goes, I'm just going to break it. The only people I could think that possibly fit this category is some naughty college students, I guess, right? They fast at home, and then when they go to college, la ilaha illallah, they break it. Other than that, inshallah, hope not like anyone else does it. That was the kafara. Qada though, qada is possible. Accidentally, if you end up when you're goggling or something goes back down, that breaks it. Here he mentions, the next thing he mentions over here is vomiting while you're fasting. Vomiting doesn't break it. Okay? Vomiting, especially if it's like, it's not intentionally done. Like you not put a hand down your throat and you try to bring it up. If it's an accident, a lot of the time what tends to happen is people get acid reflux. They do a tiny bit, comes out, and then it goes back down. That doesn't break it. Even if you vomit a mouthful, that doesn't break it as well. Okay, so you've actually vomited a lot. You have, it doesn't. Now the question is, do you want to break it now or not? You vomited, okay, has it broken it? No, it hasn't. But now the doctor tells you, look, you've got some bug in your stomach. If you don't drink or eat, you're going to get sick. Okay, that's a valid excuse for breaking it. But it's not broken due to the vomiting. But a lot of the times, like sometimes you, after vomiting, you're actually a lot better. People feel sick, they vomited, they're perfectly okay now. So don't think just because you vomited, this is an excuse to break it. Okay, maybe it can be, maybe it's not. Problem is if you vomited a mouthful, okay, and then you swallow it back in. Again, I don't think anyone's really going to be doing things like that. So, vomiting, generally speaking, doesn't break it. Important thing here as well, if you've broken your fast accidentally, it's still fard upon you to refrain from eating and drinking. So you've accidentally broken it, you have. There's still 5 hours. You can't be like, oh, well, I've broken it now anyways, I'm just going to get a burger. No. Because of the sanctity of the month still, it's still fard upon you. There's an obligation to refrain from eating and drinking still. Okay, this is important. If a girl comes off her menses, right, she has to refrain from eating and drinking if the fasting hasn't opened yet. So she becomes tahira, like comes off her menses, let's just say at 12 o'clock, Dhuhr time. And there's still 5-6 hours until fast open. It's fard upon her to now refrain from eating and drinking because of the sanctity of the time. Now, if the opposite happens, no, she doesn't have to refrain from eating. She started off fasting, halfway her menses starts. Eat and drink now. This is an important point for a lady or a girl on menses. Is haram or makruh tahrim for her to imitate a fasting person. Fasting is not fard upon her. She's not going to be like, no, I'm not going to eat. Why not? Are you fasting? No, I'm on menses. Why not eat? No, I'm just going to imitate him. La. Don't eat in front of, obviously, public. Don't go out there and say, today I'm going. No, obviously not. But as in, at the same time, you can't imitate the fasting person. It's extremely important for the girls to know this. Okay, the imitating fasting people while on menses makruh tahrim. Okay, so obviously that doesn't mean you have to eat in front of everyone, but at the same time, it doesn't mean you actually fast. Likewise, a person comes back from their traveler and they become a resident. For the remaining of the time, they have to refrain from eating and drinking as well. You've traveled somewhere, you've come back, there's a couple of hours until fast open now. You've come back to your hometown you have. For those couple of hours, you have to refrain from eating and drinking. I think he does mention it, extremely important. You only have the option of not fasting while you're a traveler if you travel before Fajr time comes in. Okay, this is extremely important. Like today, you're going to travel to Glasgow, yeah? You travel at 2 o'clock, Dhuhr time. You can't, Fajr time, you can't say, no, I'm not going to fast time, because you started the fast while you're at home. So it's fard to complete it off. The next day in Glasgow, you're a traveler. Now you've got an option. You can fast, or if you want, you can just make it up afterwards. He says, then he starts talking about qada over here. Obviously, the haid, the girl on menses, makes up those fasts. Okay, so if her menses starts, she's not been fasting for those 5, 6, how many days, she's going to have to write them down and then make them up after Ramadan. Does she do qada of her prayers in those days or not? One person's nodding his head, either saying yes or no. Everyone else, they're in La La Land. Yes, no? Obviously, no. She doesn't make up qada. La ilaha illallah. It's like 6, 7 days she's got holiday. Tabarakallah, mashallah. But it's still preferred, all our fiqh books mention this, it's still preferred that girls that begin their menses, for the prayer times, it's preferred they do ablution and sit on the prayer mats. It's preferred, I'm not saying it's fard, but I'm just saying that is preferred because it's difficult. Like, you're getting yourself into a tartib, you are right, getting up at tahajjud time or fajr time. And then 6, 7 days your menses start, you're not getting up. And then you have to get back into that when you're off your menses. So it could mess up with it can get difficult as well. So it's preferred to maintain that tartib of yours, that you take out 5 minutes at each prayer time. A lot of the salihat, like in Tareem, would do this still. Whether the menses started or not, they just come, do ablution, sit there for about 5 minutes doing azkar. You can remember God still 100 times, La ilaha illallah, something like that. So, no. So, qada, yes, qada we've spoken about. Then he's talking about kafara, again we've spoken about. It's important, if you are looking to do a kafara, it's important you consult a scholar, a learned person. Because there's always, like, I'm just giving you like a brief, quick understanding of it. There's always details to it. That's why if you think you have to do a kafara, consult, someone, talk to them and whatnot, and then after that, if it is, then you're going to have to. But La ilaha illallah. Unfortunate the times that we're currently in, but there was someone did ask a question once about masturbating while he was fasting, and he ended up fasting 11 consecutive days. And then he found out there's actually not a kafara on him. So I'm just like, it's good though. Like, you know, he's not lost out, obviously, like fasting those days, but you know, it's important to know when there's a kafara and when there's no. But no question or doubt, he needs to do tawbah. La ilaha illallah. Then he says al-imsak, but here we've spoken about this. Khalas. Ghazali also talks about this as well. Rahimahullah ta'ala. Fidya he talks about as well. These are for people who can't fast. They've got a valid excuse. If you're pregnant, okay, lady's pregnant or she's breastfeeding, and by keeping a fast is going to be detrimental to her health or the child's health. Okay. Now in the Hanafi school we're quite strict. A Muslim doctor has to determine it. And when we say Muslim, it needs to be an upright as well. Now that doesn't mean you start spying on their lives and what they're getting up to. It just means outwardly, tabarakallah, mashallah, Dr. so-and-so has got a headscarf, praying and whatnot. That's okay. Dr. so-and-so, he's praying as well. That's it. You don't have to like delve into people's lives. So, alhamdulillah, we're fortunate. A lot of us have access. You know, Dr. Safran, his sister-in-law as well. There's a lot of practicing doctors, alhamdulillah. So if the doctor thinks that it's gonna, and that's all you have to do. Look, someone gets in contact with them, I'm breastfeeding or I'm pregnant, and I'm not sure if I should fast or not. If the doctors genuinely think it's okay, there's not going to be a problem, it's okay, then then you can. If they say no, it's better not to, because why we say practicing doctors is they're always going to have the fear of God. They know the importance of fasting. They're not just going to rush it off and say, so what is a fast, and just make it up. That they know the importance of fasting, but at the same time, they know the importance of the body as well, looking after and taking care of it. So, you know, doctors like that, they'll be able to tell you. As for non-practicing doctors, khalas, don't worry about it. Why is it not important? We've got a lot of those type of doctors as well, mashallah. They give fatwas. So they just have to pay. They have to pay on a daily basis. Okay, now a lot of the I've noticed over here, a lot of the masjid say approximately about £5 or so, daily basis. I don't know how they've got it to £5. Personally, I think it's about £10. But maybe they're working out according to Pakistan or Bangladesh or something like that. So it's £5 there, and then. But I'm just saying, if you're going to be giving it locally, £5 is never going to cut it short. So depending on where you're going to end up giving that to, and who to. So that's the fast, that's the pregnant person and the breastfeeding person. Now he goes on to say the recommended actions while you're fasting. The first thing is ta'khiru suhoor, delaying the suhoor. Now the suhoor is extremely recommended. The Prophet recommended it. He said there's barakah in it, and suhoor is that which you eat before you're about to close your fast. Okay, suhoor doesn't mean that you have to eat a lot. The Prophet prayed or told us that the malaika seek for forgiveness and pray for the people who have it. That doesn't mean you need to eat a lot. It just means you need to have something at that time, whether it's a couple of dates or depending on a person, obviously. But a lot of the scholars, and Ghazali is going to talk about it as well, he said the whole point of fasting is to experience hunger. So if you're going to stuff yourself at suhoor time and it lasts you until maghrib time, and then you're going to stuff yourself again, la ilaha illallah, you're going to gain mashallah 10 kg at the end of Ramadan, but you're not going to gain spiritual openings, because you've actually you've defeated the whole purpose of it. The Prophet most of the time his suhoor was dates only, and most of his iftar was dates as well. That's it. Not dates, quickly pray maghrib and then chicken and chips afterwards. No, it just be dates and dates. And then once the Sahaba said to him, Ya Rasulullah, we're starving, literally hungry. And they had a stone wrapped around their stomach, because what that would do is when you put a lot of pressure on it, it takes away from the hunger pains. The Prophet lifted his jubbah and he had 2 stones. He goes, you're hungry with 1 stone, here, look at me. But this is why, unfortunately, millions of us fast and only a handful of us benefit. Even if you're not looking at haram, okay, good on you, okay? You're not backbiting or swearing, tabarakallah. Hunger? No. That's not ditto. Because it's chicken pies at night time, and then is bronte suhoor. Most of these people are from the subcontinent, so they know what that is. So that's why, we don't need to be strict with people at home. They can eat what they want. Tasawwuf is ultimately personal. Be strict on yourself, and that's how you're going to benefit. Hunger. Suhoor, this is extremely important. The Prophet ﷺ, and this is an extremely important point. Okay? Suhoor, you have until Fajr. But the prophetic practice was to give a bit of time before Fajr comes in and stop. Okay? And the Sahaba, this is mentioned in, the Sahihain, that we counted the suhoor from the last time the Prophet had his suhoor until the adhan went off. A person could have recited 50 to 60 verses of the Quran. I guarantee you, most of you, if I told you to recite that, it would take you about half an hour. Maybe someone who's fast enough, maybe 15, 20 minutes or so. Someone a bit faster, 10 minutes. We've put on the calendars 10 minutes, right? Because we knew if it's 15, 20, uproar. There's uproar, we put 10 minutes on it. People are like, what, I have to stop eating 10 minutes before, but how and where and what? This was the prophetic practice. Now, there's people out there that say, but there's a hadith out there. Bilal was calling the adhan, someone was drinking in the presence of the Prophet, and the Prophet said to him, don't worry about it, drink still. Yes, what's meant by that is in the time of the Prophet there was 2 adhans. Bilal called the first one to let people know time to cut off. Abdullah bin Maktoum would call the second one when Fajr would come in. So there was a gap between the first one and the second. The first one was called is Tahajjud time, and if you're drinking and eating, stop. The second one was called Fajr has definitely come in now. That's what's meant. Don't let these people get it twisted. That's not what's meant by it. Okay, and this was a lot of the practice. Lebanon, Turkey, Damascus, Tarim, in a lot of places as well. Tahajjud time, they go, some of them with duffs on them. Damascus, mashallah, that's how it was. In the middle of the night, about an hour and a half before Fajr, they would have these duffs on them. Boom, boom, and they just go getting everyone up. Tareem as well is done. They go around, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they've got some type of dust as well on them, getting people up. So it's extremely important. Suhoor, have it before minimum 10 minutes before the time's going to come in. Now, there's just one last thing. I've gone slightly over time here. Fajr timetables are extremely complicated. Okay, I know there's always going to be, I don't want to cause more fitna than there is out there, right? But I highly, highly, highly recommend you follow the 18 degrees. Fajr, and for fasting, 18 degrees one. Okay, I can't go into the whole fiqh details into it, but it's just going to take a long time. But we've obviously taken this into account. We have, okay, the timetables we have and have put out there, we've taken into account 18. Now, from what Allahu Alam, from what we've studied, if you're closing your fast after that, Fajr has come in. So if you can have polite conversations with family members, then that's good to encourage them to follow that. If it's just going to cause more fighting and friction at home, then Allah. We'll stop there, Afan, for today's class. Ta'khir as-suhoor. These are all important things to take into account. Inshallah, we'll continue on next class Thursday, tomorrow, and then the Monday after that. We're not going to have a class Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. الفاتحة.